It's a brisk and sunny day. We're going to be traveling end to end from one end of Washington Avenue in South Philadelphia all the way to the very end on Delaware Avenue. So we're getting ready to make this right-hand turn onto Washington Avenue. This is Ferry and Washington Avenue. And we're going to take a look at some of the scenery. You can see that it was very industrial at one point. There's a bridge. I don't know if it's still actively being used, but I know at one point cargo freight trains would travel on it. There were factories all along both sides of Washington Avenue, and a lot of them have been torn down or converted into condominiums or apartments. At one point, there was even a chocolate candy factory that was here, and I think they tore that down a few years ago, which is unfortunate because it would have been nice to preserve that history and perhaps repurpose the building and make it retail or some kind of community center. Washington Avenue is another one of the very broad streets and boulevards in Philadelphia. Buildings are like brand new or repurposed old factory buildings. Dock Street Brewery is pretty new. And at one point, this was like an industrial place where you could get like supplies for home building and repairs. A lot of home supply stores, especially in the early 2000s. They have a lot of eateries now and cafes. So you still have some of the home centers. You have the AutoZone and different warehouses, but there's definitely more of an integration of restaurants and places that would cater to a more residential aspect of this community. And they have Bury the Hatchet, which is axe throwing, where you actually throw an axe, which has become a trend in the last couple of years. So that's interesting. Coming up on the left-hand side, as we get closer to Broad Street, you'll see that they just recently put some retail. There's a Target there. This is a Target where you have to take an escalator to go up to the top of it. It's like confusing for me. How do you get into the Target? But it works. They have a PetSmart, a Chipotle, different eateries, and they have a supermarket called Sprouts, which is sort of like a Trader Joe's and Whole Foods combined. So this is in the last 5 to 6 years, I think, that these retail spaces were built. Across the street, I believe it's called the Rock Ballet School or Rock School of Dance, and this is primarily ballet, and a lot of the dancers that perform in the Nutcracker at the Academy of Music, I believe, go to this school. They're trained at this school. So it's a nice affiliation or collaboration between the Rock School and the annual Nutcracker that's performed at the Academy of Music. And here we have Broad Street. So we're getting ready to cross over Washington Avenue and Broad Street. And there's a whole lot of activity on Broad Street. And Broad Street is a pretty long street. One day I'll do end to end with Broad Street. But for now, we're going to do this end to end with Washington Avenue. Understanding also that Washington Avenue extends a little bit further back from where I started, but there's buildings and a river and railroad tracks and everything that cuts it off. Because there's more Washington Avenue, I believe, in West Philadelphia. So we just started with the Washington Avenue that starts in South Philadelphia at Gray's Ferry, and we're going to go end to end. We just passed Kappa, which is a performing high school, creative arts, dance, and theater, and that's actually on Broad Street. Over to the left, you probably can't see it now. And we're at 13th and Washington Avenue. We're going to travel up a little bit more, and we're going to pass one of the most iconic streets and areas in Philadelphia, and actually it was in a movie. If you're familiar with that little movie called Rocky. So we're going to be passing the Italian Market in just a couple of seconds, actually. And it is one of the oldest outdoor fruits and vegetable and food market spaces in Philadelphia and possibly in the nation. I don't know how far back it goes, but even when you go to 9th Street Italian Market, some of the tables and things that they're using to put the fruits and vegetables on look like it was built like in 1890. I mean, it's just kind of old. But it has this really authentic old world feel to it, and it's been around forever. So the Italian Market is spread out within this area, but it's primarily 9th Street. And so we're getting ready to cross Washington Avenue and 9th Street. We're not going to go down the Italian Market Street right now, but you can see some of the fish shops and the fruit and vegetable shops as we pass by. And on a Saturday, especially in the summer, it is always cars double parked. It's always a traffic situation near the Italian Market. I would say in the last 20 to 30 years, there's also been a large influx of immigrant families and communities building up in this area. There's a large Asian population, Southeast Asian, and also a large Latino population here in South Philadelphia, making it really a culturally diverse community. One of the most culturally diverse neighborhoods in Philadelphia. One of the most. And now as we get closer to Delaware Avenue, we're at 5th and Washington Avenue. You'll notice on the left-hand side that there are some residential buildings. When we started, there were some apartments that they were newly put up, but a lot of retail and industrial space. But here we have some housing complexes and some sort of row homes or individually standing homes closer to the Delaware Avenue area. In Philadelphia, city plan is modeled, very influenced by United Kingdom. So there's a lot of squares, like parks that are like, you know, like Jefferson Square, that's one, and Rittenhouse Square, and all of that. So that was a little square. I don't know if it was in the original plan of the city or if that's what they're calling it now. There's a lot of murals in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a city that's known for its murals. Mural Arts is a nonprofit, and they've done loads and loads with beautifying some areas that were lackluster. I think they were originally created to combat a graffiti issue, but now it's kind of evolved into this very just really invested in the Philadelphia community. We just passed the mural that was on the left-hand side just a couple of seconds ago. Okay, and so now we are at Delaware Avenue. It's also known as Christopher Columbus Boulevard, but I choose not to call it that. And Delaware Avenue is what it is. And that is the end of Washington Avenue. So that was a quick end-to-end. And I hope you enjoyed it. All right, let's turn on to this avenue. The end.